So over the last 3 years, LEGO Marvel has released these 3 buildings. And while all 3 are good, what is the best one? To figure out what the best building is, I'm going to be ranking it by build, figures, price, displayability, and personal opinion. So let's start off with the first category. Now, while all 3 builds are amazing, I do think that the worst build is the Daily Bugle. Now, I still think that this is absolutely an amazing building, but compared to the other 2, the building techniques are not that good. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't look good or that it's not detailed. I'm just saying that compared to the other ones, it is a little bit more plain. And that's just because it's a skyscraper. I mean, it can't really get that much more detailed. If it didn't have that broken window, it'd be a lot more plain. Now, sure, the interiors look nice. I'm not gonna act like that they look bad. It's just, it's an office building. I mean, it can't really get that interesting. I still think it looks great. It's just, it's not the most interesting out of the 3. So with that, I'm gonna have to give the Daily Bugle only 1 point. And now the next one on the list is gonna have to be the Sanctum Sanctorum. And even though this building is smaller than the Daily Bugle, I do think it's better. I just think if you look at it, it has more color and more curves, and I just think it's more interesting. I mean, if you just look at the walls outside, the first floor is gray, and then brown, and then green. And with it being a corner building, I just feel like it's a little bit more interesting. It's not just a plain skyscraper. I like the Daily Bugle more, I just feel like this one has more interesting building techniques. And I also like the interior. I like the grand staircase that goes up and the 3 different floors. Now the staircase does kind of take up a lot of room, but still, I feel like a lot of people are going to argue that the Daily Bugle is better, and I will say it is a more popular building. I just think that the Sanctum has a lot better building techniques. It's not just a bunch of windows. And honestly, I also just had to give the Sanctum some points, because it does not survive these next few rounds. But now with the Sanctum getting 2nd place, it gets 2 points. And now, of course, the winner for the build category is the Avengers Tower. I mean, how could it not win? I mean, just first off, the height of this thing is huge, and I'm not going to act like it isn't a bunch of windows, okay? For most of the bottom half of the building, it is like 1,000 windows, but if you look at the sides and the back of it, I mean, the way that it has that gray line that meets in the middle on the back, and then it has the 2 gray lines that curve on the sides, and then it has that huge front panel that closes it off, and then if you just look at the top, it's super accurate. It has the landing pad, it has the Avengers logo, it somehow manages to get all the weird slopes and curves. I mean, they just did an amazing job with this set. And I mean, if you look at the interior, it has a ton of rooms. If you count the top part, it has like the most amount of rooms out of all 3, and I think it has the most Easter eggs, and I just think it looks the best. If you look at all 3 side by side, this is the best one. So of course I'm gonna have to give the Avengers Tower 3 points for the build category. Now under the figures. So starting off with the set with the worst figures, I'm gonna have to pick the Sanctum Sanctorum. Now not only does it have the least amount of figures, but I don't even like half of them. The ones that have leg printing look really good, but the other ones just don't have any. And now something about these sets is I feel like they should all give you at least 1 new character. I'm pretty sure every single figure in this set, aside from the Doctor Strange, is all new. All of the figures are like revamps or redos of figures that we've already gotten before. There is not a single new character in the entire set, which I think really ruins it. And technically the Iron Man isn't new, it's the old one, it just has the new, in my opinion, worse helmet. But every figure is a character that we've gotten before, and I think that that really ruins it. And not to mention the printing on most of them is terrible. There's no leg printing at all. And I mean, if you want to count the 2 Doctor Stranges as new characters, then there are 2 new characters, but they're really just 2 variants of Doctor Strange. So with that, I'm gonna have to put the Sanctum in 3rd place with only 1 point. And now for 2nd place, I'm actually gonna have to give it to the Avengers Tower. I know it has the most figures out of all of them, but there is a lot of repeats. And if you just exclude all the repeats, there is a lot of new, really cool figures. But like I said, most of them are just revamps of figures that we've already gotten before, or characters that we've already gotten before. Like for example, the Falcon looks really good, but we've gotten like 4 or 5 Falcons before this. And now it does have some new characters, but the new characters are Helen Cho, Alexander Pierce, and a couple others. And those characters are cool, and they aren't figures that we would have gotten otherwise, but they just aren't as cool as some of the characters in the Daily Bugle. And there are still a lot of repeats. I mean, there's 2 Captain Americas, there's a lot of figures from sets from earlier on this year, there's 4 Jatari, and not to mention the reused legs on 3 different figures. I still think that this set has an amazing character selection. It has some really cool characters that we probably would have never gotten otherwise, but I'm gonna have to give the Avengers Tower 2nd place with only 2 points. And our 1st place is obviously going to be the Daily Bugle. Now this set does have less figures than the Avengers Tower, and yes, there are repeats from sets that came out earlier that year, but there is still a good amount of new characters that we've never gotten before that people really wanted. Some of the new characters are Punisher, Daredevil, Blade, Firestar, and Black Cat. Those are some characters that people thought we would never get, especially characters like Punisher and Daredevil who are very violent. And there's also the civilians and the people that work in the Daily Bugle. They're technically new characters, they're not like that cool, but they're still new characters. But it's not perfect, I'm not gonna act like they're amazing, because I just realized if you don't count dual molded legs as printing, the only figures with leg printing is Carnage and Green Goblin, and that is absolutely terrible, but I still think it gives you a good selection of characters, it gives you a lot of villains and heroes to work with, and to me the biggest thing is it gives you a lot of characters that people have actually wanted. So with that, I'm about to give 1st place with 3 points to the Daily Bugle, and now it's time to go to the price category. So to me, they're all fairly priced, but I'm gonna have to put the Sanctum in last place for the worst price. So one of the reasons is I feel like the building does not take up enough of the base plate. It does feel kind of small for $250, and the set was originally gonna be $200, and I remember before the set came out, like a month or two before it came out, they raised the price to $250, because that was around the time that they did the price increase on everything. And so that right there also makes me want to put it lower because the price went up before it even came out. And this one has good value, but I just feel like the other ones have way more value for what you pay for. So I'm gonna have to put the Sanctum in last place with only 1 point. And now for second place, I'm gonna have to put the Daily Bugle. Now this set I also think has amazing value for $350, but until the price increase, it was $300. So you were paying $300 for almost 4,000 pieces and like 25 minifigures or however many is in the set. And I really feel like the price increase kind of ruined what made it so good. If there wasn't a $50 price increase, this would have been number one, but that extra $50 just kind of ruined what it used to be. So with that, I'm gonna have to put the Daily Bugle in second place with only 2 points. And now in first place is gonna be the Avengers Tower. Now some of the reasons why I put this in first place is not only did it not get a $50 price increase, but it's $500 for over 5,000 pieces, which is pretty good. And the building is huge. You get the most amount of figures I think in any set ever, and it just has so much going for it. I really feel like it has the best value out of all three. But I mean, if you just put the Daily Bugle and the Avengers Tower side by side, for only $150 more, I really feel like it's worth it. I really feel like it has the best value out of all three sets. So with that, the Avengers Tower got first place and 3 points. Now into the display ability category. Now, not surprisingly, the one in last place again is the Sanctum Sanctorum. This one looks good on display, but just compared to the other two, it's just not as good. I mean, the other two actually have things happening. This one's just the building. And I mean, it looks good, but if you want to display it with figures, it still looks good. Just there isn't as much going on as there is in the other two. So again, the Sanctum is in last place with only 1 point. And now in second place, I'm gonna have to put the Avengers Tower. Now, the reason why I'm putting this one in second place is because I think the Daily Bugle has a lot more going on. I think this is the best looking building out of all three, and it'll look great on display. But I think the figures add a whole nother level, and the action that happens on the build adds a whole nother level of displayability than just the building can do. And it has like some Jatari flying around, and it has figures everywhere. It has Tony falling. I actually custom did this. I put the Leviathan on there. If you get enough support beams, you can get it stuck on the side of the build, and that makes it look even better. But I don't think it's as good as what's in the Daily Bugle. I just think if you're trying to display it with figures, the Avengers Tower is just a little bit worse than the Daily Bugle. So I'm gonna have to put it in second place with only 2 points. Now obviously first place is the Daily Bugle. I think one of the things that makes this one the best is the Goblin. Him crashing through that window I think makes it like a centerpiece. It's one of the really big interesting things in the build that really makes it good to display. And you also have Sandman coming out of the ground. You can put Spider-Man or multiple of the Spider-Man all along the build. There's characters up and down the building, and you can have Doc Ock on the build with his really good looking tentacles, and there's civilians to put in the build. And I just feel like whenever they were making this, they really put a lot of detail and a lot of thought into the displayability of it with the figures. Because if you took all the figures off, it would look kind of weird. There would just be a random broken window, there'd be random sand coming out of the ground, but it's made to display with figures, and if you put the figures on there, you get one of the coolest display pieces from Marvel. So that is why the Daily Bugle won this category with first place and got 3 points. Now onto the last category, my personal opinion. And in last place, I kind of feel bad at this point, is the Sanctum. It's been in last place ever since the second category, but my personal opinion is it's just not as good as the other two, and I think everyone can agree on that. It's still an amazing set, but it's just not as good as the other two. So sadly, again, the Sanctum Sanctorum is in last place with only 1 point. Now in second place, I'm gonna have to put the Daily Bugle. I actually really like the Daily Bugle, but if we're being honest, the Avengers Tower has way more interesting building techniques. It's way more iconic, and I just think it's not as good as the Avengers Tower. I mean, in each category I kind of stated why certain aspects of each set are better than others, but in my personal opinion, the Daily Bugle is not as good as the Avengers Tower. So the Daily Bugle is gonna have to go in second place with only 2 points. And in first place, I'm gonna have to put the Avengers Tower. Even though I really like the Daily Bugle, this building looks a lot better. It's not just a skyscraper. It has a lot of interesting building techniques. It's very fun to build. It has my favorite interior out of all three. I think it has the best price value out of all three, and I just think overall it is the best set out of all three Marvel buildings. So the Avengers Tower has won yet again with first place and 3 points. So now after all the categories, in last place you have the Sanctum Sanctorum with only 6 points. In second place you have the Daily Bugle with 11 points, and just barely winning, in first place you have the Avengers Tower with 13 points. So the Daily Bugle and Avengers Tower were very close to winning, but I think all three buildings are very good, and I hope that they keep making them each year. But after that, the best LEGO Marvel building is the Avengers Tower.